Hey, it's Mike here, and today a Mediterranean diet versus vegan diet showdown. We have a very high quality study that just came out, and it is by Dr. Neal Barnard and his colleagues, and I am happy to say I have an exclusive interview with Neal Barnard that we're about to get to answer the question, which did better, a vegan diet or a Mediterranean diet in this particular situation?
And the people who were vegan first and had great results and then had to switch to Mediterranean, they were really upset.
Before we hop into that interview, I want to hit the basics of the study really quickly so I can just have a continuous interview and everything will be smooth. Here's the study. It's a randomized crossover trial on 62 people who are overweight. It was comparing, of course, a vegan diet, which was oil-free / low-fat, to a Mediterranean diet, which was a Predi-Med style diet. And you can pause here to read the details of that. But for the basics, the Mediterranean diet was reduced meat intake, added olive oil, more whole grains and vegetables, etc. For the crossover aspect, one group started with the Mediterranean diet and switched over to the vegan diet. The other group started with the vegan diet, switched over to the Mediterranean diet. They had 4 months on their first diet, and then they had about a 4-week washout period where they went back to their normal diet to kind of clear the slate, and then they had 4 more months of the second diet. And the results are in massive charts showing a ton of different metrics, but to put it simply, the main results that were statistically significant were, from their conclusion, quote, "A low-fat vegan diet improved body weight, lipid concentrations, and insulin sensitivity, both from baseline and compared with a Mediterranean diet. Blood pressure decreased on both diets, more on the Mediterranean diet." And to expound, the vegan diet led to fat mass loss as well as visceral fat, which is something you particularly don't want. And then it also showed a pretty meaningful lowering in LDL, while there was no lowering of either of those things in the Mediterranean group. Anyway, before I get to the interview right now, if you're worried about funding, this was funded by PCRM, which takes no industry funding. We'll talk about bias in a bit, but here is my interview with Dr. Neal Barnard. All right, thank you so much, Dr. Neal Barnard, for coming on. You need no introduction, so you're welcome to the show. Very welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be with you today.
Yeah. So you just came out with this recent study, which I think is very fascinating. One of the better design studies I've seen come out. Again, randomized crossover trial, as I probably just talked about. And so I just want to hear what inspired you to make this, to actually go and design the study and make it happen.
Well, for a long time, we've been doing research on vegan diets. You get the animal products out of your diet. That's a great thing. And sometimes you go further, you keep the oils low or other things. And the health benefits are just huge. Lowers your cholesterol, great way to lose weight, great for diabetes, great for so many things. But then kind of out of the left field, you're hearing more and more people saying, you don't need to do that. You just should go Mediterranean. And I'm not sure people even know what it means. They kind of envision you're driving down the coast of Italy and you're going to have a glass of red wine at a table on the seaside. It just sounds like something everybody want to do. And so a Mediterranean diet has gotten really popular. And I'm concerned about it because when you look at what it means, it is better than what people are doing now for the most part. But it says, okay, reduce your red meat, but don't eliminate it completely. Have a little more fish, reduce your dairy, but don't eliminate it completely. And you're thinking, wait a minute, it's kind of halfway vegan. And if you're a doctor and there's somebody in front of you who's got diabetes and they got extra weight and they want to get healthy, and you're going to sell them something that's just kind of a halfway measure, why not give them the thing that works, which is a low-fat vegan diet? So we've been concerned about it, but we thought you got to be fair. Let's test it. And so that's why we did this study.
Awesome. Yeah, it's something I get hit with all the time, and you're right. People just imagine drinking a little bit extra wine and putting olive oil on everything, and everything is good. And you probably don't know this about me, but I've made videos in the past about, the negative effects of oil and gotten a lot of flack for it. And I'm considered like a little too extreme by many, especially on extra virgin olive oil, which, yeah, maybe, it's got some antioxidants. I calculated it has like the same amount of antioxidants as like a single blueberry for a serving of extra virgin olive oil. I think it's definitely way better than animal fat. And I think that's where we're seeing the benefits. But let's look at some of the really big differences you found here between the vegan group, which was a low-fat, oil-free vegan group, if I'm not mistaken. So, what do you think between the LDL cholesterol and various effects like that? Do you feel like there's a big difference in what the outcome might be for in terms of heart disease for the vegan group and the Mediterranean group?
Without question.
Yeah.
When we brought people in, these are people who wanted to lose weight. They were overweight. And they came in, and half of them went vegan, half of them went Mediterranean. And they gave the diet a really good try. Both groups met every week, and they met with instructors who really believed in their respective diets. For the vegan group, we brought in vegan dietitians who helped them to understand it. For the Mediterranean group, we brought in Mediterranean-oriented dietitians. And so they really pushed. But as the weeks went by, the Mediterranean group was getting uneasy. They weren't really losing weight very much. And time would go by, some of them were gaining weight. And so, why? Because they're being pushed to eat fish, fatty fish. They're being pushed to eat olive oil. And so they're not losing. The vegan group, though, was losing and losing and losing. Now, don't get me wrong. When people go vegan, for many of them, they think, gee, this is going to be hard. They imagine it's going to be hard. They imagine you're going to have to acquire a taste for folk music or something like that. But then they discover, no, vegan diet just means you're not eating animal products, and it's really pretty easy. So by 16 weeks, the vegan group was used to it. They lost a lot of weight. And then the study stopped and made everybody switch diets. So the vegan group had to go Mediterranean. And I got to tell you, they did not like giving up the vegan diet because they saw they had finally found the answer. They were accommodated to it. They didn't miss fish and meat and so forth. They were glad to be rid of it. And now for the study, they had to have it. And they started regaining lost weight on average. But the people on the Mediterranean diet, after 16 weeks, when they went vegan, suddenly the weight started coming off. So psychologically, it was really an interesting thing for the people. But to answer your question more directly, LDL levels really didn't budge very much for the Mediterranean group, but they fell, 15 points for the vegans, and that's big stuff. I mean, if you keep that going year after year, your risk of a heart attack just goes way down.
Yeah, that is so huge. And just to emphasize it, we need to look at this chart here. It's ridiculous. You see that vegan group, whichever one's eating vegan, just crashes in terms of weight. And then, of course, you have that washout period. And then they gain it right back when they go on to the Mediterranean diet. Or basically, it's a perfect representation of what's happening with the weight and how effective it is. And would you say that this is due, because I believe there was a 500 calorie intake difference between the groups. So would you say that is probably naturally from fiber versus oil, or is there anything else that's going on with weight loss there?
There are really two reasons why people on a vegan diet lose weight. The first is because their diet is high in fiber and it's high in carbohydrates. Fiber effectively has no calories, and carbohydrates are pretty low in calories compared to fat. So their calorie intake naturally falls, but you're full because you're eating fiber. You're eating a lot of food, but it's not very calorie dense. So that's the first thing. Secondly, it's not just fewer calories are coming in. You're expending more calories. In other words, after a meal, you're actually burning calories a little bit faster. This happens after every meal. It's called the thermic effect of food. That's it. And when people go on a vegan diet, their thermic effect of food bumps up. Not a lot, about 14, 15%, something like that. And so you're taking in fewer calories. We see that. But you're also burning calories just a little more like you did when you were 14 years old. And so so vegans are the skinniest people there are. You don't see that so much with the other diets.
I promised my viewers a video on the thermic effect of food, and I have yet to deliver, and that was based off your the other study you recently released. So over to another topic, because I know people are going to look at this who are critics of a vegan diet, and they're going to say, oh, well, it was done by people that appear to promote a vegan diet. So how do we know that it was not just, totally biased? And so if you have an answer for that, go for it.
Yeah, sure. I understand that. And I'm in the position of the same position that people are in, say, if they're tobacco researchers. You might go into studying tobacco within kind of even-handed, but pretty soon you realize tobacco is bad for you. That doesn't mean you stop studying it, because you want to know if tobacco cessation might reduce the risk of heart problems and how long it will take the lungs to clean up. So you keep studying it. But we learned a long time ago that people who eat meat have higher risk of cancer. They have higher risk of heart disease, higher risk of diabetes, and many problems. And so there's no question about that. And you clearly develop a concern about diets that have meat in them. They just do that. So when you're doing a study like this, we want to make sure that our participants are shielded from your own concerns about various unhealthy diets. So the way we do it is we bring in a group of people, and then they're randomly assigned to the two groups. The statistician does not know who's in what group and is blinded to, as we say, blinded to group assignment. And then the people teaching the diets, we always pick people who are believers in that diet. So once a week, the Mediterranean group got together, and they were taught by dietitians who thought a Mediterranean diet was great and were experts in it. And then the vegan group was taught by people who believe in the vegan diet. And so you try to take bias out as much as you can. And then you submit the results to a journal, and they send it out to their reviewers who try to tear you apart. And so you just do your best to be unbiased. And I think that we succeed with that. Because that's what good science is all about.
And this is why I'm so glad I talked to you, because you don't see that written in the study. Like, we had people that cared about their diet, trying to get people to lose weight in their diet. And then another thing that I think is interesting is that we see so many sort of, I don't want to say wins on the vegan side, but you see that weight loss, you see that fat mass, I believe, went down. You have that major LDL improvement. But then you see a couple things like, they didn't quite do as well. They still did well, but in terms of blood pressure and I believe triglycerides. So do you have any ideas on that?
Yeah, I don't know why, but both groups in blood pressure improved. But the Mediterranean group, their blood pressure improved even more. And I'm not quite sure why that was. Maybe it is an olive oil effect or something else. But that was there. But on balance, I have to say that if a patient wants to lose weight and they go to the doctor and are told, try a Mediterranean diet, I really think you're giving them an ineffective treatment. And if they say, I've got heart disease, I need to get my cholesterol down, and you prescribe that diet, you're prescribing something that's really pretty ineffective. This is not the beginning of this, though. We've seen this, the DASH diet, popular diet, dietary approaches to stop hypertension. And it's generally better than most people's diets, but it was inspired by the observation back in the 1990s that people on vegetarian diets had lower blood pressure. But they thought, well, nobody's going to really do a vegetarian diet, so it was just kind of semi-vegetarian. And it proved to be effective for lowering blood pressure. But my point is that people for a long, long time have recognized that plant-based diets are good, and they're trying to make up these kind of halfway diets that they think will be more palatable. My approach is to let the patient or the public decide what they want to do and not assume that people are unwilling to go vegan. I got to tell you, when people come to us, they want to get better and they're willing to make changes. And let's face it, eating spaghetti with tomato sauce is not a bad thing, and it was, for anybody who's gone vegan, they realize in about 3 days you're used to it, and it's better than any other diet you ever did.
Yeah, it's a shame we have this sort of popularized I would almost call it a pushover plant-based diet where, people could be going vegan, getting more results, but instead they're sort of letting these things creep in. And then obviously the fallback from a Mediterranean diet is going to look a heck of a lot worse than a fallback on a vegan diet where you might be eating like some vegan junk food or something, but then trying to stay whole food. So it's like you're aiming one place and falling back probably shows up as well. I hate to like bring this back up because it's like not vegan infighting, but it's been like a debate of, should vegans be told to not eat olive oil, or does it really matter? And so, we have some studies showing, olive oil might hurt your arteries. Some studies showing, no, it seems to be like it could have some positive effects. It's hard to tell what a whole food vegan who is given these things, what would happen with their artery improvement, would their artery function improve or stay the same or get worse? And so do you think that extra virgin olive oil, if there was perhaps a vegan group with extra virgin olive oil and no other animal products, like almost like vegan Mediterranean versus your vegan diet, what do you think the results would be?
Well, as a matter of fact, in the PREDIMED study, which was done in Spain, and it was more than 7,000 people who were at risk for heart disease because they were overweight and had risk factors, they were put on a Mediterranean diet of various kinds, and the effects were studied. In the course of that trial, they did a sub-study. And the overall results were a Mediterranean diet is modestly effective at reducing cardiac risk factors. Not huge, but it helps a little bit. They did a sub-study where they looked at those people in the Mediterranean diet who were closest to vegan. And what they did is these were people who might have been having oil and nuts and whatever, but they were kind of setting aside the fish and the dairy and so forth. And of all the people in the study, those were the ones who did the best.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to do a Mediterranean diet, go for it. But instead of fish, have chickpeas. Throw out the dairy, have the almond milk instead. And if olive oil is part of your diet, that's still better than butter and chicken fat.
For sure. That's what I say. It's like a spectrum. And then,
yeah.
And then there's a little, so there's a little bit of debate though, like should be people who are trying to reverse heart disease be dodging oil like Esselstyn or not? So you have that improvement of Mediterranean diet to a vegan Mediterranean diet, but then what do you feel like a measurable effect, if any, would be between the kind of low-fat vegan diet that you're looking at that's oil-free and then one with the olive oil? That's something we haven't studied, I guess. So.
Yeah, well, to be clear, as you said, olive oil is better than animal fat, no question about it. And the numbers are clear. Chicken fat is about 30% saturated fat. That's the bad one. You want to avoid it. Olive oil cuts that down to about 14%. Great. But if I use a nonstick pan, that cuts it down to 0. So I'm going to say you're better off without the oil at all. But if you're using oil, that's better than butter and it's better than chicken fat. With regard to weight loss, olive oil is frankly the same as chicken fat. They've all got 9 calories per gram. So oils really interfere with weight loss. If you're skinny and you're healthy and you're not trying to lose weight and whatever, having some olive oil here and there, I don't think is going to hurt you at all. But keep in mind, an olive tree doesn't have a faucet on it. You can't just take olive oil out of the tree. Olive oil is, I think, kind of a refined product. I know that's a funny way to put it. But what I mean is you take 10,000 olives, you throw away all the fiber, you throw away all the pulp, you take that oil, put it in a bottle, and even though you charge $30 for that bottle and you use the word virgin on it, it's still an extract from the whole plant. It's just like taking sugar out of sugar cane or sugar beets. So it's not a natural thing. And some people can get away with it better than others.
Yeah, it's still 9 calories per gram, et cetera. And like I always tell people, I believe that oil is not a health food, but obviously you choose how much oil you eat. People have this idea that I'm like, if you eat oil, you're the worst person ever. That's not true.
Well, I think we have to demoralize these issues. Mm-hmm. What I mean is de-moralize. There are moral issues about what we eat. There are moral issues about what we're doing to animals. Americans eat 1 million animals every hour. That's a moral problem. Mm-hmm. We are destroying the planet in the service of this. That's a moral issue. If you are raising children, if you have loved ones, people who depend on you, and you are risking your health with a lousy diet, those are all moral issues. But if you're going to an Italian restaurant and somebody puts a little bit of olive oil down and you dip your bread into it, that is not a moral issue. I don't care. And so I think we have to not arm wrestle with each other quite so much about some of these things.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
So my last area that we haven't really covered in terms of the improvements is we saw some insulin resistance improvements. We see those a lot in your study. So what do you think is actually at play here to make that happen between the two groups?
Yeah. Every day of your life, when you're eating any kind of fatty foods, your average person has a ham sandwich with mayo and cheese, and the fat in those foods comes out of your intestinal tract into your bloodstream. And within the first 40 centimeters of your intestinal tract, it's all in the blood. And it ends up in your muscle cells and in your liver cells. And when it gets in there, it causes insulin resistance. All that means, it's a fancy word, meaning you got fat buildup inside the muscle cell that makes insulin unable to open that cell to get the sugar inside. And so when you're on a vegan diet, there isn't any animal fat left. Mm-hmm. And if you keep the oils really low, there's not much of any kind of fat. So that fat buildup in the cells starts to dissipate and the insulin resistance starts to go away too. And it's the most exciting thing for a patient who's on diabetes medications to discover in a week or 2 weeks, they discover their insulin resistance is going away. And the way they know it is their blood sugar is going down and down and down and down. And their doctor's saying, stop your insulin, stop your insulin. And they feel like health, to their amazement, has suddenly returned to them And it's because of the diet changes that they made.
Yeah, that's amazing. We can't forget that people in these studies are people, and that's pretty amazing. And I will say, I've talked about intracellular lipids so many times on my channel, and they obviously referencing your research. We've even gotten into like ceramides and stuff like that, and being derived from saturated fat. But is there anything else? When you have these people after the study, do you get a chance to like talk to them? Obviously, you do, and get so like, are there any people? Obviously, you don't need to like out anybody. Any stories that are particularly interesting, maybe from this one or?
I just have to tell you that the participants in this particular trial were on such a roller coaster. Whenever we work with research participants, there's a human story in every single person. These are people who have health desires and health goals and health challenges that they're overcoming. In some cases, they saw their parents die of a heart attack and they don't want to follow suit. They're concerned about what's going to happen to their children. And in this particular study, it was amazing to see people come in. And they liked the idea of the Mediterranean diet. They thought, that's great. That'll be kind of fun in the way we were talking earlier. But then they get into it and they're not getting the results and they're starting to get frustrated. And their instructors really were trying to say, don't be patient, let it kick in. They're getting more and more annoyed. Mm-hmm. And the people who were vegan first and had great results and then had to switch to Mediterranean, they were really upset. And they said, I'll do this for the study. I'll eat your darn fish for the study. But they couldn't wait for those 16 weeks to be done so they could go back to whatever variant of a vegan diet they wanted to go back to. And it was really interesting to see because your average person imagines, doctors imagine, that a vegan diet is hard. But our folks said, look, I don't have to count carb grams or calories or anything. This is easy. And the results are so great that to have that experience and then have us take it away for research purposes, many of them are really quite upset by it.
Maybe it's a lesson that they need to learn, though. I'm joking. No, I think it's horrible that they had to go through.
This kind of study where you have each individual does both diets and they do them with maximum support so they really know how their body reacts. It convinced me that these two diets are really very, very different. And the only thing I can say is that a Mediterranean diet can be rehabilitated. Just get the fish out, get the dairy out, get the oil out, bring the chickpeas and vegetables and fruits and so forth in.
Throw those in.
And I guess what you've got is a vegan diet in Italy.
Yeah, and pretend that you're in Italy too. That will help, especially for me in Iowa. It's been 0 degrees for a week, and it's going to continue being 0 degrees. Yeah, and the Mediterranean diet just keeps topping all of these lists of like best healthiest diet, and you see the Ornish diet make it up on some of those lists too. But it's frustrating, especially hearing your experience of these people are actually seeing major improvements and they're getting emotionally invested in one. So I guess my last question would be: do you have any other studies coming up, or how often are you? Because you're cranking out a lot of studies, it seems. So good on PCRM. But do you have anything you can disclose for the future, maybe?
Yes. Yeah. As a matter of fact, this is a little bit down the pipe, but I wrote a book called Your Body in Balance, and in the course, it's all about how foods affect hormones. Because I did studies on menstrual pain with diet and a lot of things that were really cool where you can change how your hormones work. Anyway, there's a chapter in that book that's all about hot flashes. And I got a call from a woman who said, Dr. Barnard, I got to tell you, I read your book. I had terrible hot flashes driving me crazy. So I did what you said, completely vegan, kept the oils really low, and I decided to do soybeans. Now, in my book, I talked about what soybeans do. But she said, I did it in a specific way. I got my Instant Pot and I put in the soybeans and I had a half a cup every day and my hot flashes were gone in 3 days.
Wow.
And I thought, wow, if every 52-year-old woman had that result, this would be a different world. Mm-hmm. So I just spent the last 3 months or a little longer than that doing a study on postmenopausal women with hot flashes with exactly her regimen, which was what I'd written about in Your Body in Balance, but she nailed it down specifically. So everybody got an Instant Pot. We used an app to track your hot flashes. And it was vegan, very low in oil, plus a half cup of soybeans every day. The results were really something. I cannot tell you them now because they haven't been published yet. They'll be published soon. And we are doing a replication of that study as we speak. So my hope is to have some really good tools for women who are concerned that they've turned a corner in life You got hot flashes, which are driving you crazy now. They hit you in your sleep, so you're tossing and turning, and you just feel rotten. And you're worried that now, at this stage of life, other things are going to come in, like a risk for breast cancer or heart disease, or maybe even cognitive problems. And so if we've got some answers for those, I think we're going to have a whole bunch of really motivated people. So stay tuned. I can't wait to share that with you. Let's do this again, and I'll tell you.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'll link the book will be linked in the description. And thanks to that woman for potentially saving a lot of quality of life for a lot of people down the line. So yeah, thanks.
That's the way it is. I did a study on menstrual pain years ago and found that you can use no animal products, heat oils really low, for an adolescent with menstrual pain. Started the same way. It was a young woman who called me up and said, Dr. Barnard, I got this problem. And we started talking, and I started to do the biochemistry in my mind, and I realized this ought to work. So very often people bring to us things that we are in a position to test in a randomized trial.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'll let you go here, but it probably in that girl's situation, it might have been the phytoestrogens potentially blocking a little bit of excess estrogen or taking up those receptors. Who knows? We'll talk about that in another video. But thank you so much for that. That was awesome. I really appreciate the insights into that. And I went a little longer than I told you I would, but I just had to keep hearing what you had to say. So thanks so much for coming on.
Nice to talk to you. Thank you so much. Good luck for everything you're doing.
In the end, Neal Barnard hit a ton of super good points, but I would just say that in terms of our main diseases here, we're talking about heart disease and diabetes and obesity. The vegan diet crushed it. That's all there is to it. All right, that's it for today. Neal's book and the study will be linked below. Feel free to like, subscribe, notification bell, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.